Hello, and welcome to the G.A.T.E Show. G.A.T.E stands for Groton Advocates for Tax Efficiency. I am Scott Ahmet, Chairman of G.A.T.E. I'm also a representative on the RTM in District 6. G.A.T.E was formed when a dozen or so concerned citizens in Groton got together and decided to do something about their local government. G.A.T.E was formed as a political action committee to express our issues and to be a source for information to Groton taxpayers. We felt the electorate needed to know better the policies, processes, and ongoings of how and why their tax dollars are being used. Our overall mission is to provide a more transparent, informative source to the Groton electorate so they may make informed choices on how their tax dollars are being spent. Roseanne.
Hi, I'm Roseanne Katowski. I would also like to welcome you to the G.A.T.E Show. The G.A.T.E Show came about in order to present the residents of Groton an alternative perspective to tax and spend. Today we welcome Mayor Heather Summers for her second appearance on the G.A.T.E Show, and Councillor Karen Morton and Councillor Bruce Flax. The G.A.T.E members have provided questions to our guests regarding the town of Groton budget and budget process in advance. Scott?
Okay, thank you, Roseanne. We'd like to start the show with a statement from each of our guests regarding the town of Groton budget process. Mayor Summers, would you like to begin?
Sure, certainly. Well, I don't have a prepared statement. I just would like to speak to folks about the budget process and how it works, our experience with it, or my experience with it this budget season. And the process starts probably in October, where the town council can give the town manager direction, if they choose, on services that they would like to look at, perhaps trimming or cutting back on, and what the direction is for him going forward. This year, the council asked the town manager to look at coming in at a level service budget, and at that point, the council can decide what services they want to prioritize or what areas of the budget they would like to scrutinize more closely. The budget is very large, so at times I feel it's important to look at certain portions of the budget. To try to scrutinize every section of the budget is somewhat overwhelming on some level. This year the town council was given a budget by the town manager. The council, which is made up of 9 volunteers from throughout the city, spent countless hours covering every department, having discussions with department heads on what was required, what were critical services, and where they could look to trim some of the dollars, seeing as our revenue resources have significantly decreased and in the future look to continue to decrease. The council, I believe, felt it was very important to take small but precise steps to change the way that we fund certain services. And we went through the process and were able to eliminate a significant portion, $1.8 million from the budget. And then after our work is done, we turn it over to the RTM, which is the fiduciary side of our town. And they have an opportunity to go through department by department and decide if they'd like to add monies back in where we've cut. They're not allowed to add above the town manager's number. And in this process, they added funding back in. So I believe the complete cut was about $900,000 for the budget, or the trim from the town manager's original number. I will say the flaw that I find in this process is the fact that the town council hears from the department heads, and then the department heads go to the RTM and have the same conversation 3 weeks or 4 weeks later. In my opinion, this provides someone who's not given what they want at the town council level the ability to come up with a better reason why they need funding over the next 3 weeks. If I had it my way, and one of the things that we're looking to do possibly in the next budget cycle is to have the town council and the committee of the RTM, i.e. we'll pick one, public safety. We would invite them to the town council so we can all hear the same information at one time. You have more heads in the room, more questions can be asked. The RTM would then be able to ask questions at the same time the council is, so we are all hearing the same information one time. And I believe that more heads in the room asking questions is a better approach than doing this duplication of interviews, so to speak. And I'm taking up too much time, so it's Bruce's turn.
Thank you. Mayor Summers, Councilor Morton, what would you like to add to that?
I was very disappointed in the entire budget process. I'm almost at the point where I feel like the system right now is broken. This was my first budget process, and the thing that alarmed me the most was the fact that we spent so much time coming up with a budget that we thought met the needs of the town in terms of declining revenue, and we put a lot of care and a lot of thought into it. It went to the RTM, and in my opinion, the majority of the RTM members were uninformed. They were unprepared. There was a lot of misinformation that was put out on the floor by various people as though it were gospel fact, and everyone just seemed to, it was almost like a mob mentality kind of process, and there was so much misinformation given that votes were swayed, and as a result, basically all of our work was undone. I think the system is broken. I don't think you can have a body as large as the RTM and get any sort of consensus, and I think we need to look at doing something to change the process.
Thank you, Councilor Morton. Councilor Flax, you'd like to add something?
Sure. What do I want to add? I think I agree with what the other councilors have said in that it was a difficult budget season, and I think what we need to work on is, I respect the process because that's what the process is in the town, and so we have to work with that process. But there was definitely some problems, not because I disagreed with the decisions that the RTM may have made in what they did, but because, as Councilor Morton said, I felt that they weren't as involved as or knowledgeable as they could have been. And some of the resolves that the mayor talks about, I agree with. We need to figure this out and try to get everybody on the same page. And I'll give a couple of instances of where I was very disappointed. People may be aware that I was trying to hold the city accountable with their police budget, and made a lot of statements about the police budget and the city budget. And again, I think people should be encouraged by having somebody question it. And if the whatever you're questioning, whether it be a department or the borough or the city, that they have an opportunity to explain themselves in a respectful manner. And at the RTM, the question was asked, how would cutting $230,000 from your budget compromise public safety? That's what the mayor said, it would compromise public safety. And the answer was, well, you'd be cutting our dispatch and we'd have to close the lights off and shut the police station down. That's ridiculous. And for the RTM to let that go, to me, was irresponsible. That, again, they have an opportunity to be able to explain themselves, but they can't just be a pushover in the answers that they give. Another instance was the Knowing School. We were looking for $370,000 to take the school down, and somebody in the RTM stood up and said, you have to give them a chance. Give them a chance. And I was the head of the Knowing School Reuse Task Force, which met for over a year. We then gave Knowing the ability to give us a plan, and we gave them 6 months and extended it. And when they came back, it wasn't a viable plan in our eyes, and it was, and so we ended up wanting to take it down. So those are instances. Again, I want to respect the process, and I want to work with the RTM and find out where their mindset is, and try to work things through for the next budget process. But we need to do that now.
Thank you, Councilor Flax. At GATE, we strongly believe that the only way to achieve wise town of Groton spending as well as transparency is to allow the voters to decide the budget with a budget referendum. The question is, how can this be done? Scott?
The town of Groton, the charter section 5.5.2 talks about classes of ordinances. There are legislative ordinances, which addresses all ordinance not considered as bonding or emergency. 5553 legislative ordinance states, quote, "The legislative ordinance shall be adopted subject to the powers of veto and referendum hereunder upon a vote of the council," unquote. From what we have learned so far, this is the most direct path to a budget referendum. Could you please comment and also let us know whether you support a budget referendum?
What order do you want to go in? You want to mix it up?
You can start first.
Okay, all right. It's my understanding, based on our charter, that in order to have a budget referendum, we would actually have to open up a charter revision commission, and they would recommend to the council that we go to a budget referendum. The idea of having an RTM is in lieu of having a budget referendum, because you have representatives from all different districts of the town to be the voice for the people within that district. So therefore, if you're going to have a budget referendum, you could either dismiss or get rid of the RTM. You would no longer need that function. I personally am not in favor of a budget referendum, and the reason is that I've seen it in other towns, and we would never get a budget passed. It would take forever in Groton. I think that our best move to go forward to improve the process that we have during the budget process is to, number one, have better communication with the RTM, to engage them in the budget discussions earlier. We have tried to do this, and I will say that during the last budget season or cycle, we had maybe 2 or 3 RTM members. 2 of them are actually sitting right here that would come to the budget hearings. But for the most part, the RTM was fairly absent during the council's deliberations. That's why going forward, I would like to see the budget presented by the department heads one time. And that time would be, for example, public safety. You'd have the council and you'd have the public safety committee from the RTM. Everybody in the room at the same time, everybody hearing the same information. All the questions and answers could be provided on a one-time basis. This really helps prevent the miscommunication that may occur, the emotion that's attached to some things that might happen during the presentation. And it also allows that committee to go back to the full RTM firsthand and explain what questions were answered by the council and the RTM at the same time. The RTM could still then have their own deliberations separately from the council and make their own independent decision. But I think there's a definite disconnect between what the council hears and what the RTM hears.
Mayor Summers, as far as the actual charter revision, the legislative ordinance process bypasses the charter revision the way we understand it. Maybe we could get someone to really research that, because we just read what was in the charter. So I really think that you can do it without a charter revision commission.
We certainly could ask the town attorney to look at that. I'm not sure you have support for that on the council, and because that would be really, in essence, getting rid of the RTM, and I'm not sure you have full council support. I do not support that. I think that if we had a more refined process, I do believe that the RTM could work.
What if the
the RTM and the council relationship could work better than it is. And I think one of the most difficult things is getting new people or people that have energy and are inspired to run for the RTM. I'm sending a shout out to folks, because what happens to most of the parties is we have the same people running over and over, and it's a lot of work. There's a big burnout rate. And
I welcome that.
yeah.
If I may interject, I mean,
Sure.
I think that we have to look at why we want, what's your reasoning for wanting it, you know?
to let the voters have a choice. And I don't think you necessarily need to abolish the RTM. What if the budget went to referendum when the RTM was done with it?
Yeah.
That
Well, I think you can look at some other resolves too, which would be somewhere in the middle, where if, I think there's some towns that have a thing where if you get, 10% of the registered voters to sign a petition, that you could then reassess the budget again. It's almost like and so you can get to something like that
I've
and
seen
and
those.
have some kind of middle ground. But I am torn between, at first, if you asked me 5 years ago, I said I wouldn't want a referendum. And based on the budget process I've seen, especially in this last year, I would consider it, but that makes me want to go back to kind of what we're doing, or hopefully going to try to achieve, which is to to get to figure out what some of these issues are and find out, like, because it's not right just to say, boy, I don't agree with what the RTM did, so I want to change it. It has to be deeper than that, and so I think that getting the discussion going and trying to get some of these efficiencies just in the budget process resolved may help.
Well, what you said about the about a petition brings us to the next question, and I want to go to Karen. Section 4.5, Power of Initiative, allows for a simple majority of RTM to submit an ordinance to the Town Council. If the Town Council passes the ordinance without change, then it shall be effective. Unfortunately, while possible, this scenario is definitely not probable. We have looked through this charter, and it's of deep concern that there is no mechanism in place in the charter for the citizens to get an item on the ballot through a petition. Karen, could you speak to that?
I think that even though there's no mechanism in the charter, I think if you got enough public support from the taxpayers of the town and you presented a petition to the town council, I think the town council would be receptive in terms of taking a look at the issues and doing whatever they could to make sure that they're at least research it, see what the options are. I don't think the town council is certainly going to just simply dismiss a very well-supported document. And getting back to what the other councillor said, I would support, based on the last budget, I would support a referendum only because I think that I don't think the present system is working. However, given Mayor Summers' suggestions for what we plan to do next year, I would be willing to wait to see how well that works the next time around. But if we end up with a repeat of what happened this year, I don't think that we can continue on that way. I think you've got, and I know that the argument's been given, we'd never get a budget passed. I think it might be easier to get a budget passed if we had a reasonable budget to begin with.
That's right.
I think it's very difficult to get budgets passed, which year after year after year call for tax increases with no regard for the ability of the taxpayers to pay for it. And I don't see going to referendum as any different than we get 10% voter turnout for elections. So I think that the people that are interested enough and care enough about their taxes will turn out to vote at a referendum.
Thank you.
I think there's a follow-up on that. There are a lot of other towns that I've researched that do budget process differently. I think maybe someone, maybe myself, who knows, can ask the council or propose to the council to look into something that could be, any varying differences. Specifically, I looked at the town of Cheshire, Connecticut, and they have like certain specific questions, and there are, like Bruce mentioned, there are percentages that click on certain ways that they can do the budget. If they don't get 20%, then whatever the council votes on is the budget. So it forces the people to somewhat get out and get involved more, which I'm all for. I mean, we need more people to get involved, like myself and Representative Katowski, to get involved. And that's kind of why we started the GATE, and we're starting to grow slowly, and we appreciate all the help we've been getting. So I think there's maybe something else out there that we can do. All right, for the next question. We appreciate the council's effort this year to begin the process of reducing the Groton budget by starting with the duplication of services. A lot of people have come up to me and said, this seems like a no-brainer. However, the fact is the 2014 budget was that the RTM members in the city and Groton Long Point joined forces in order to block the town council's reductions. I know it all too well as I was there. Given this political reality, I'm going to direct this to you, Bruce. Is combining services possible?
Boy, I'll tell you. I'd like to think it is, but it's funny. I've been on the council 6 years, and when you get on your gung-ho, like, we got to do this, and the folks who've been on the council a long time, like, oh, can't do that, next. And so I would say that anything is possible, but I think that duplication in police and in public works is a far cry, because, as I'm sure we all know, it has to come from the inside out. So it has to be something that the people in the city, as an example, would want. And so to me, the best way to get people talking and thinking about it is education. And I think that the best thing we can do is to let the people of the city know where their money is going and how it's being spent, and what the different entities in the city mean, and let them see, and hopefully they can, people complain about taxes, and this clearly would be a cut. It may not be a cut for the town directly, but it'd be a cut for at least a quarter of the citizens in the town, and I think that's important. Finally, that the people who say, what services do you want to cut? The town manager always says that. If you want to cut the budget, what services do you want to cut? Right. And I think the people in the city and the town need to look at that and realize that there is a duplication of services, and it is to me, it's unacceptable. But we also need to realize that there are 2 police chiefs, and so I'm not even saying that the city or the town police chief is the one that needs to technically get eliminated. I'm not saying that. It just needs to be looked at. And even if you can take care of efficiencies, like we're going to fix our police station a little bit, maybe we should look at what the city needs when we're doing that, so that we can share buildings and share that kind of thing. So there's so many ways you can do it. You can start in baby steps, and we need to start in baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank you.
saying that, have we opened the lines better of communication better to like the city and Groton Long Point to kind of foster that environment?
Personally speaking, for me, when I do try to open those lines of communication, I hit a brick wall, and
Really?
and the brick wall, to me, should raise a red flag, because if everything is good, I mean, if we're asking intelligent questions and you want answers, the city should be excited that they have an opportunity to give those answers. There shouldn't be a negative connotation to it that you're trying to. They should say, like, yeah, here we go. Here's what we have. Here's where you're wrong, and and give it to us. And instead, I feel like we get the runaround, and we get the runaround a lot. And it's not just from the city departments. I mean, I think we see it in a lot of different places. So I don't want to just pick on the city, but I feel like we don't get straight answers.
Thank you. Mayor Summers, for those of you on the council and in our audience who took notice of the recent Pequannock Fire District financial situation, when the residents of Groton had the opportunity to have their voices heard, they overwhelmingly voted in favor of reduced government spending. Do you believe this was an anomaly or a snapshot of true Groton voter sentiment?
Well, Pequannock Bridge Fire Department is not the entire town of Groton, and that is, they were looking, I think, at a 40% increase in their taxes. That's a very different than a 1 mil increase in
So you think it was an
taxes.
anomaly?
I think it was an anomaly.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a pervasive feeling. Quite frankly, I don't think people realize, for the most part, that most people's taxes went down last year.
Well, that was because of the revale.
Right, but I don't think that people are as attuned to the taxes as we are on the council or the RTM, because most people have their taxes in their mortgage and they might not notice a slight increase or decrease. But I think that, to kind of tag on to what Bruce has said a little bit, is that the town of Groton, if you look at it as a whole, and I try to look at it on a micro level, and I did try to talk to the RTM and say, we have to learn to take the emotion out of the equation, because everybody has their own little fiefdom or kingdom that they've had a certain way for 30 years and so on and so forth. But the world is changing, the town is changing, our funding sources are changing. We have a decreased footprint at Pfizer. The one building at Pfizer that is going to come down is a $2 million hit to our grand list. The car tax, I've just been told by COG, which is the Council of Governments, is going to happen at some point. That's $3.8 million reduction for the town of Groton. We have to be able to have open conversations with subdivisions, with departments, to change the way that we fund services, or else we will be in the position of a Bridge Fire Department for the town.
Right.
And I know it's hard to hear and no one wants to hear it, but we have to take small, precise steps for change. And I realize that change is not easy, But if we don't start now, it's going to be an overwhelming task down the road. And I think that this council really tried to look at where we thought there was clear duplications in services. Certain areas might not want to hear it, but they were duplications. Talk to any of us, you'll see. And when I look at it, we're spending $250,000 for a dispatch in the city where that call's coming into the town now and it's being transferred to the city. That's $250,000 we could have spent somewhere else or we could have reduced. So those types of things are difficult to swallow when you're saying, oh my God, we're trying to do the most efficient thing and no one's listening to the actual rationalization. They're basing their decision based on emotion.
Thank you.
So.
I think it's a closing.
Any other councilors want to comment on that?
Okay.
All right, last question. The last question goes back to the town council budget goal of reducing duplicate services. As far as duplication of services, it seems that the police, public works, planning, parks and recs are at the top of the list. What are the areas you believe services could be combined? I think we already kind of briefly hit on that. Anyone else want to comment? Councillor Morton?
I think that my personal preference would be to focus initially on police and public works. I think those are the two areas that would result in the biggest savings, and also I think it would be the easiest to start trying to eliminate duplications. I think the other areas would be a little more problematic, but certainly
Worth looking into.
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you, councilors. The members of Groton Advocates for Tax Efficiency believe the only possibility for efficient and wise spending, along with transparency, is a budget referendum. Through our review of the town charter, and as we have documented and discussed here tonight, the best way to achieve a budget referendum is through the town council and the legislative ordinance process. For those of you who believe that the voters should have a say in how their hard-earned tax dollars are spent, the only choice is a budget referendum. Please contact your elected town council members or RTM representatives and let them know how you feel. Thank you, councilors, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.
For having us.
And remember to open the gate to transparency.